There are mornings that seem ordinary, yet they divide your life into before and after. For me, that morning began with the faint smell of coffee and the sound of slippers dragging across the cold tile floor. I'm Ella Lenana Johnson, 70 years old. I used to be an accountant, a wife, a mother. I once had a house filled with laughter. Now, it's just me and this small kitchen, where every morning I still brew my drip coffee, add a pinch of cinnamon and brown sugar, the scent of the past. That morning, the sun hadn't yet slipped through the window, but I already felt something was wrong. The kitchen trash bin was open. A glint of cobalt blue shimmered faintly in the dim light. I froze. I bent down and my heart stopped. Among eggshells, napkins, and coffee grounds lay a porcelain plate blue with a gold rim. That plate wasn't just any plate. It was part of the wedding set my husband Robert gave me 45 years ago. We'd had our first breakfast as husband and wife using that set. We'd celebrated our son Scott's first birthday with those same plates. And on that same table, with that same set, I had served my parents their last Christmas dinner before they passed away. Every scratch, every tiny chip on the rim carried a memory. I never wanted to replace them because some old things hold our very soul. My hands trembled as I lifted the plate from the trash. Coffee grounds clung to its golden edge. I didn't understand. Who could do this? Then a familiar voice came from behind me. "Oh, you're up, Mom. I just did a little cleaning." I turned around. It was Carly, my daughter-in-law, in pink silk pajamas, her hair sleek, lips lightly tinted, as if the world always belonged to her. I tightened my grip on the plate. "Carly, why is my wedding china in the trash?" She shrugged, her tone light as air. "Oh, that? They're old, chipped. I bought a new set, prettier, more modern. Look." She pointed to the cabinet. A new set of white plates gleamed there, cold, lifeless, soulless. "See? Clean, minimalist, very contemporary. You should be happy, Mom. The kitchen looks so much brighter now." I stayed silent for a few seconds. The kitchen, once filled with Robert's laughter, now felt as cold as a showroom. I whispered, "Carly, that set is from my wedding day. They're memories, not garbage." She smiled, thin and sharp as a blade. "Oh, Mom, don't be so sentimental. They're just dishes. Old ones. I used my card, don't worry. I'll handle it later. What matters is the house looks new again." The word card echoed in my mind, though I couldn't even process it. My chest tightened. 45 years of memories reduced to old dishes. I looked around. The curtains had been replaced, my old sofa gone, the wall art taken down, and suddenly I realized this wasn't my home anymore. My hands trembled. Tears welled up before I could stop them. Carly smirked, her tone sharp and dismissive. "Oh, Mom, it's 2025. Time to move on from these outdated things. Scott and I already agreed this house needs a change. You should update a little, right?" I took a step back, staring at the woman who'd just said update with such icy pride. I felt my heart crack, but strangely, I didn't shout. I was calm. I set the plate gently on the table and said quietly, "If you like new things so much, you can use them. In your new home, because you won't be staying here anymore." The air froze. Carly's eyes widened. "Mom, what did you just say?" "He's another every one of the cost." I looked straight at her, my voice steady. I said, "It's time for you to leave. You don't get to throw away someone else's past just because you can't understand its value." For a moment she stood still, eyes wide, speechless as if she couldn't believe this frail old woman had just said that. But I knew. For the first time in 8 months, I had taken my voice back. I walked out of the kitchen, my heart pounding but light, free. I was no longer the silent, accommodating mother. I was the owner of this house. And the real story had only just begun. Have you ever had someone throw away something precious to you just because they didn't understand its worth? Comment the city you're watching from so I'll know how far this story travels. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay for more family revenge stories where women like Ella Lenana reclaim their voices and their power. When I told Carly she would be leaving, deep down I knew this story hadn't started that morning. It began 8 months earlier, on the day I received a phone call that changed my entire life. That day it was drizzling. I was wiping the dust off Robert's wedding photo when the phone rang. My son's voice came through, hoarse and weary. "Mom, my company went bankrupt. They laid everyone off. No compensation. Carly's 6 months pregnant, and we can't afford rent anymore." I froze. Scott, my only son, the boy I raised with everything I had after Robert passed, was calling for help. All I could say was, "Come home, son. This will always be your home." I thought those words were love. Now I realize they were the door I opened for the storm to enter. That Sunday afternoon, they arrived Scott, Carly, and 2 big suitcases. I had prepared the guest room, changed the sheets, bought baby formula and prenatal milk, even painted white clouds on the living room wall. I wanted to welcome my first grandchild with all my heart. Carly hugged me, her expensive perfume lingering. "Thank you, Mom, I promise, it's just for a few months." I believed her. I always believed my daughter-in-law was sincere. The first month was peaceful. Scott got up early to look for work. Carly rested at home. I cooked, did laundry, prepared meals, cared for her as if she were my own daughter. But slowly, the house began to change. One afternoon, I returned from the market to find my beige curtains gone, replaced by dark gray ones, heavy as mourning cloth. "Carly, where are my curtains?" Intersaned. "Oh, they were old. I changed them. These new ones block sunlight better. Don't they look modern?" I forced a smile. "As long as you're comfortable." But that day, the house grew darker, not just in color. Then came the sofa. Our old brown sofa, where Robert and I watched the news every night, vanished. Carly said she had it moved to the basement to create more space. I said nothing, staring at the empty spot where sunlight cut through the gray curtains, stabbing at my heart. Then came the music. She played hip-hop all day, saying it stimulated the baby's brain. Once, as I read my book, she said, "Mom, this music is good for the baby. You should be happy." Happy? I laughed bitterly inside. The noise was a hammer pounding away the quiet peace my home once had. By the second month, Carly began reorganizing the kitchen. She replaced my old cooking utensils with shiny stainless steel sets, rearranged everything, and threw away the spice jars I'd kept since Robert was alive. One day I asked softly, "Carly, where's my sea salt from France?" "Oh, I thought it was expired, so I tossed it. Mom, you shouldn't keep old stuff. It clutters the house." She called memories clutter. That's when I realized she wasn't just cleaning the kitchen. She was erasing me from my own home. By the third month, her mother, Mrs. Evelyn, showed up. No notice, no permission. She rolled in her suitcase, wearing sunglasses, and said, "I'm here to take care of my daughter. Her pregnancy is delicate." Carly was thrilled. I was frozen. Evelyn stayed for 2 weeks, taking over the living room, complaining about my cooking and my messy habits. Everyone. Once, I overheard her whisper to Carly, "You should ask your mother-in-law to give you the master bedroom. She's living alone. What a waste of space." My hands shook as I washed dishes. Tears fell into the sink. But I stayed silent, because I didn't want to upset Scott, because I was afraid of breaking the family, because I thought enduring a little wouldn't hurt. By the 4th month, Carly gave birth to a baby girl, little Camille. The house was filled with the sweet sound of newborn cries, and my heart softened. When I held that baby, happiness washed over me. For a moment I forgot all the bitterness, but that joy didn't last long. Carly began using the baby as an excuse for every demand. "Mom, don't cook with garlic, it affects my milk." "Mom, don't turn on the TV, it disturbs the baby." "Mom, keep the AC on all day, Camille needs a stable temperature." "It's no matter, Privst." Every sentence began with "Mom, don't." And slowly, I wasn't allowed to do anything in my own house. By the 5th month, I woke up to find my bed gone. Carly had moved my belongings into the small guest room. The master bedroom where Robert and I had once slept, where I prayed every night, had become the nursery. Pink decals on the walls, my wardrobe pushed into the basement. I stood at the doorway, my chest aching. Carly said cheerfully, "Don't be sad, Mom. The big room has better light, it's good for Camille. You'll sleep better in the smaller one anyway." I nodded, saying nothing. That night, I cried until the morning birds sang. Robert once told me, "Never let anyone take away the peace in your home." But now, I had nothing left to protect. By the 6th month, my sewing studio, the place where I stitched fabric like weaving memories, was turned into a playroom. "Camille needs space for early development," Carly said. I gathered my sewing machine, my fabrics, my threads, all the tools of my life, and moved them to the damp basement. I sat there, surrounded by the smell of mold, my hands trembling. That's when I realized I was no longer the owner of this house. I had become the caretaker, the cook, the silent one. And then, one morning in August, when I found my wedding china in the trash, I understood. It wasn't just a plate thrown away, it was the final limit of my patience. I stood in the cold kitchen, the plate still stained with dried coffee grounds in my hands. I whispered, "Enough." That was the moment my story and my revenge began. If you've ever had to stay silent just to keep the peace, write "I know that feeling" in the comments below. Stories like this aren't just about pain, they're reminders that staying silent too long is another way of losing yourself. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay to follow part 3. The numbers don't lie, when kindness gets exploited. After the day I saw my wedding china thrown away, I stopped believing in phrases like, "Thank you, Mom," or "We'll only stay for a little while." I began recording every household expense not because I was stingy, but because I needed to know what truth I was living in. I took out my old accounting notebook, the one that had followed me through 30 years of work, opened a new page, and wrote the first line. Expenses since Scott and Carly moved in. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew this: when kindness is abused, truth is the first knife that cuts through illusion. The first week, I reviewed the utility bills. Before, my monthly average was about $120 for electricity, $60 for water, $50 for gas. Now those numbers had doubled, then tripled. The latest month showed $310 for electricity, $140 for water, $120 for gas. My fingers trembled as I read the numbers. Still, I tried to comfort myself. There's a baby, the air conditioner runs all day, maybe that's it. I was used to finding excuses to forgive. Then came the internet bill. It used to be $60 per month, but now it was $175. I called the provider. The agent said, "Your plan was upgraded to Premium Plus, including Netflix and Disney." I paused and asked, "Did I authorize that upgrade?" "No, ma'am," she replied. "It was done through the app by a user named Carly J." Carly. I hung up, my chest heavy as stone. She wasn't just living in my house, she was managing my Wi-Fi. The next week, I checked my bank account. There were unfamiliar charges. Macy's, $289. Sephora, $214. Target, $356. In total, $3,400 spent in 2 months, all on a secondary card under my name. But I had never issued a secondary card to anyone. Then I remembered once Carly had said, "Mom, I need to buy baby formula online. Can I use your card just for today? I'll transfer the money back tomorrow." I believed her. Like always, I believed. Now I knew there was never any transfer back. I printed the statements and spread them across the kitchen table. Under the warm yellow light, they lay there, evidence of my own naivety. I marked each line in red ink. Every number wasn't just money, it was a small cut into trust. That afternoon, Carly came home carrying several shopping bags. I asked softly, "What did you buy?" "Oh, just some things for the baby, and a little makeup for myself." "Don't worry, I used my card, I'll pay you back." I nodded, but my eyes stayed on the receipts in front of me. She didn't realize every transaction leaves a trail. I said slowly, "You know, Carly, I used to think kindness was limitless until someone started calculating it in dollars." She laughed, thinking I was joking, and walked away. But I didn't laugh. That night, I sat alone in the small room, the one that used to be my sewing studio. Rain tapped against the window. Each drop sounded like the rhythm of quiet sorrow. I asked myself, where did I go wrong? Was it because I loved too much, letting others cross my boundaries? Or because I was so afraid of loneliness that I accepted disrespect? I opened the accounting notebook again. In total, over 8 months, I had spent nearly $17,000 on my son and daughter-in-law utilities, groceries, baby supplies, and luxuries that had nothing to do with me. I stared at the number and sighed. $17,000, the price I paid to buy my own silence. The next day, I told my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, what happened. She held my hand and said, "Ella Lanena, kindness without boundaries becomes an invitation for those who exploit it." Her words struck like a slap, painful but awakening. I sat there, tears falling, ashamed, hurt, but finally awake. That night, I couldn't sleep. I brewed coffee, placed my accounting book on the table, and wrote one more line. "I no longer wish to be a victim." Then I opened my laptop and typed, "How to file an eviction notice for family members." I never thought I'd be capable of doing such a thing, evicting my own son. But a voice inside whispered, "If you don't protect yourself, you'll have nothing left to give anyone." The next morning, I called my niece Valerie, a civil lawyer. When she heard my story, she sighed. "Auntie, I'll help you, but you must be strong. This isn't about money anymore, it's about your rights." I nodded, though my heart trembled. For the first time in months, I felt I was doing the right thing. That evening, during dinner, I said quietly, "Scott, I need to talk to you." Carly glanced up mid-bite. I placed a folder on the table. "These are the statements, the bills, the unauthorized card charges. Do you have anything to say?" The room fell silent. Scott looked at his wife, then at me, his face pale. "Carly, is this true?" She forced a nervous smile. "I just used it for a bit, Mom. I was going to pay you back." I cut her off. "No need to answer now. I just want you both to understand everything has a limit." I stood up, picked up the final statement, and said, "Tomorrow, I'm meeting with my lawyer." Then I walked out, leaving behind two faces, one guilty, one terrified. That night, I wrote in my journal, "I once believed love meant giving without counting, but today, I learned that kindness without limits is the shortest road to heartbreak." I closed the book, and I knew the real storm was only just beginning. If you've ever been taken advantage of by someone you love, comment, "I understand" below so women like Ella Lenena know they are not alone. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay, where family revenge stories help us reclaim our boundaries and the self-respect we once lost. I always thought the most frightening thing in a family was arguing. But I was wrong. Indifference is what kills a person the slowest. After the night I laid the bank statements on the table, the atmosphere in the house turned icy. Carly avoided looking at me. Scott worked late, said he was busy, but I knew he was just avoiding me. The only sounds left in the house were Camille's cries and the television, always on to fill the silence. I made coffee, but the cinnamon no longer smelled comforting. I ate, but there was no taste. I looked around the kitchen once, filled with laughter and love. Now it felt like a stage where everyone played polite roles. One morning, as I was clearing the table, Carly walked in, phone in hand, her tone sharp and commanding. "Mom, don't fry anything this week, okay? I read that old oil is bad for the baby's health. Also, please turn off some lights, the electric bill is too high." I looked up at her. She was talking about the electricity bill, the same one inflated by her constant use of the air conditioner, dryer, TV, and those decorative lights I'd never even touched. I simply replied, "Don't worry, Carly. I won't be using much electricity this month. I'll be out more often." She didn't catch my meaning, just nodded and walked away. The door closed behind her, leaving me with that cold, careless back. I gave a faint smile. Sometimes, people don't need knives. A cold glance is sharp enough to break a heart. That afternoon, I sat on the porch. The air was heavy and hot. Suddenly, a dull pain spread across my chest, radiating to my shoulder. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, thinking it was just fatigue. But the pain lingered for over 10 minutes, sweat dripping down my face. I called weakly, "Carly, Carly." No answer. Music played from the living room, and I could hear her laughing on the phone. I tried to stand, gripping the table, my voice shaking. "Carly, I need help." She glanced up, frowning. "Mom, I'm on FaceTime with a friend. You're probably just overreacting again. Drink some water and rest, you'll be fine." Then she shut her door. No concern, no footsteps, not even a glance. I stood there, clutching my chest, feeling my heart tighten painfully. But my tears didn't fall because of the pain, they fell because I finally understood. If I collapsed today, no one in this house would care. I staggered to the porch. Mrs. Rodriguez, my neighbor, saw me swaying and rushed over. She helped me to a chair, panic in her voice. "Ella Lenena, are you okay? You look so pale." I nodded weakly, gasping for breath. "Just a little tired." She didn't believe me. She called a taxi and took me to the hospital. The doctor said it wasn't a heart attack, but he warned of severe stress and high blood pressure. He looked at me kindly, his voice calm. "If you don't ease your emotional strain, next time it may not be a false alarm." False alarm. I stayed quiet. I hadn't wanted pity. I just wanted to know if I still mattered to anyone. When I returned home, Carly asked casually, "Feeling better, Mom? See, I told you, just stress." I didn't answer. I walked straight to my room and shut the door. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the wind lashed against the windows. I wondered if I truly disappeared one day, would they even remember I existed? I had let them take my space, my money, my memories, and now they had taken even my worth. That's when I realized I had vanished from my own life. The next morning, I went for a follow-up appointment. The doctor, a gentle, silver-haired man, asked me, Do you live with family? Yes, with my son and daughter-in-law. Do they take care of you? I smiled faintly, in their own way. He nodded, then said something that stunned me. You need therapy, not for your heart, but because you're emotionally wounded. You must rebuild your boundaries before you completely disappear. Boundaries. Those two words echoed in my mind all the way home. I looked at my frail hands. Every wrinkle held a story, every scar a memory. I'd lived long enough to know no one saves you but yourself. That night, I wrote a short letter to my niece, Valerie the lawyer. I told her everything. The expenses, the statements, the indifference, even the chest pain. At the end, I wrote one simple line. Can you help me? I want to take back my house and my life. 10 minutes later, Valerie called back, her voice steady and firm. I'll handle everything, Auntie. You deserve peace. Don't be afraid anymore. I hung up, my heart racing. For the first time in months, I felt like I was standing up for myself. That night, I stepped outside, gazing at the moon. The light shimmered on the old roof tiles, and the wind carried the scent of dry grass through my hair. I whispered to Robert, the man I'd loved and lost, I'm sorry for letting our home become a stranger's place, but I promise, starting tomorrow I'll reclaim it brick by brick. I took a deep breath. The ache in my chest faded. Not because the illness was gone, but because I had found my courage again. Have you ever felt invisible when you were hurting, ignored by the people who should have cared the most? Comment, I understand, so that women like Ella Lenena know they're not alone. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay to watch Part 5, Eviction Notice, when a mother fights back with reason. It was Monday morning. I woke earlier than usual. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, touching the table where the cobalt blue dishes sat washed, clean, neatly arranged. My hands no longer trembled when I touched them. I felt calm, the calm of someone who has finally had enough. I brewed my coffee, sat down, and opened my laptop. A new email from Valerie, my niece and civil lawyer, appeared. Auntie, here's the eviction notice. I've reviewed it carefully. It's 100% legal. You just need to sign it and hand it to them in front of a witness. I printed the document and placed it neatly inside an envelope. The words, Notice to vacate 15 days, stood bold in the center of the page, cold and final. I never thought I would do this, evict my own son and daughter-in-law. But sometimes, love isn't about holding on. It's about drawing the line. At noon, I invited them to the living room. Scott sat on the sofa. Carly stood beside him, arms crossed, face like steel. I looked at them both, my heart heavy but my voice steady. I need to talk. One last time as the owner of this house. Scott frowned. Mom, what is this about? I thought you'd calm down. I placed the envelope on the table and pulled out a small wooden board. On it were all the bills, statements, and expense records, each marked in red ink. Calm down. I've been calm for 8 months. I was calm when your wife changed my curtains, moved my bed, and threw away my keepsakes. I was calm when my card was taken, when I was called old-fashioned. I was calm when I clutched my chest in pain, and no one in this house even looked at me. But today, I'm done being calm. The air turned heavy. Carly forced a smile. Mom, you've misunderstood. I raised my hand. Don't lie, Carly. You seem to have forgotten credit cards leave traces, and the bank keeps a voice recording of the person who activated the card. Would you like me to play that recording for Scott? Her face drained of color. Scott looked up, eyes wide. What, Carly? You really did that? She said nothing. There was nothing left to defend. I stood up and looked at my son. Scott, I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it for respect, something that disappeared from this home. You let your wife control everything, even the air I breathe. I forgave it because I thought you were tired, stressed, but if I keep enduring, I won't be your mother anymore, just a shadow in my own house. Scott lowered his head, silent. I handed him the envelope. This is an eviction. Notice you have 15 days to move out. You'll also need to repay $3,400 in unauthorized expenses within 2 months. And finally, I want one thing, not money, a handwritten letter of apology. Carly bit her lip, tears welling up. Mom, do you really want to throw me out? I looked at her, my voice calm but firm. No, I'm not throwing you out. I'm removing you from a place you never respected. The room fell utterly silent. The ticking clock sounded like a countdown to a new beginning. Scott spoke quietly, voice breaking. Mom, I'm sorry. I let everything go too far. I placed my hand on his shoulder. I know, but apologies don't erase consequences, Scott. You must learn to take responsibility. Because a man isn't truly grown if he lets his mother suffer for his weakness. Carly began to cry. Scott sat motionless, hands clasped tightly, head bowed. I turned toward the porch, my voice still steady. I won't be here when you move out, but I hope, when you open another door someday, you'll understand what a home really means, something you both lost today. 15 minutes later, I heard the bedroom door close. Camille's cry echoed through the hallway. Carly's sobs followed. Scott's soft voice tried to comfort her. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. But it was the kind of exhaustion that comes with freedom. That evening, Valerie came by. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "You did the right thing, Auntie. No one, not even family, has the right to steal your peace. I'm certain now." I smiled, glancing at the signed document on the table. My name stood clear and strong, Ella Lenana Johnson. I hadn't just signed a legal paper. I had signed my life back to myself. Sitting by the window, moonlight spilled across the table, glinting off the old porcelain dishes. I whispered softly, as if to myself, I don't need to win against anyone. I just need to win back the part of me that stayed silent too long. And for the first time in months, the house was truly quiet. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of peace. If you've ever had to be strong to protect yourself, comment, "I understand, Ella Lenana." Sometimes, kindness must come with boundaries, not out of coldness, but out of self-respect. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay to watch Part 6, 15 Days to Leave. The house hasn't been the same. No more Carly's morning music. No more forced laughter. No more smell of spilled milk on the floor. Only silence, a strange kind of silence, as if the whole house were holding its breath, waiting for something to end. Day 1. Carly barely spoke. She just held little Camille all day, avoiding my eyes. Scott withdrew, left for work early, came home late. At night, I could hear them arguing behind closed doors, muffled, restrained, heavy. I didn't interfere. I simply cleaned the kitchen, wiped the cabinets, and put things back where they belonged. The little objects, the flower vase, the clock, the wedding photo all returned to their rightful places. The house was slowly becoming itself again. Day 5. Scott knocked on my door. He was holding an envelope, $200. "The first payment, Mom. I'll keep paying you back, just like you said." I took it silently, nodding. He stood there for a while, then whispered, "I'm sorry for letting it get this far." I replied softly, eyes fixed on the bills in my hand. "Remember, son, an apology isn't the end. It's the beginning." When he left, I found tears rolling down my cheeks without knowing why. Maybe because I still loved him, but this time, I was loving him the right way. Day 8. Carly knocked on my door next. Her hands trembled as she held out a piece of paper. "This is the letter you asked me to write." I took it and saw shaky, uneven handwriting. Her voice cracked as she said, "I'm not asking you to forgive me yet. I just want you to know that I understand now. I was selfish." I said nothing. She bowed her head, carried Camille, and quietly left. When the door closed, I unfolded the letter. "Dear Mother Ella Lenana, I forgot that every object in this house carries a story. I was too arrogant to see that I was living inside a home made of memories. I'm sorry for throwing away not only your dishes, but your trust. One day, I promised to teach my daughter to honor the past. Thank you for not calling the police, but instead giving me a second chance." My hands shook as I folded it back. Not from anger, but because, in her words, I heard something I thought had died long ago. Genuine remorse. Day 15. The final morning. Scott came to say goodbye. He and Carly carried their suitcases. Camille slept in her arms. Scott placed a set of keys on the kitchen table. "This is everything. No spare copies." I nodded. "Good. Thank you." He looked around the house, eyes misty. "Mom, the house looks just like it did when I was a kid." "Yes, Scott, because it never belonged to anyone else. It was only lost for a while." Carly stepped forward, voice trembling. "Thank you, Mom, for teaching me the hardest lesson of my life." I didn't hug her. I didn't scold her. I simply said, "Sometimes, gratitude is something we only learn after losing everything." The door closed. The car engine faded down the street. The house fell silent, a new kind of peace. Emptiness that feels like freedom. That evening, I walked through every room. No toys scattered on the floor. No dishes piled in the sink. Only me and the steady rhythm of my heartbeat echoing through the quiet. I lit a small candle and placed it on the altar beneath Robert's photo. "Robert," I whispered, "I did it. I took back our home and my dignity." The candlelight flickered, casting my shadow on the wall. And for the first time, I didn't see an old woman. I saw a survivor, rebirth, from the ruins. A week later, I hired a locksmith to change every lock. I reclaimed the master bedroom once, the baby's room. I repainted the walls a soft cream, hung white curtains, and brought back the old bed. The room seemed to breathe again after months of suffocation. Then I reopened my little sewing studio in the back room. The old Singer machine clattered softly, its needle-piercing fabric like a heartbeat returning to life. Neighbors began dropping by again, asking me to mend pants, patch shirts. One brought fabric, asking me to sew a pillow for her child. I smiled for the first time in months. I was working not for others, but for myself. One afternoon, Mrs. Rodriguez came over carrying a small box. "I found this kitten in your yard. Maybe she's looking for a home." Inside was a tiny gray kitten with bright green eyes. I picked her up. She meowed once, then curled into my arms. "Welcome home, Luna," I whispered. From that day on, Luna followed me everywhere. When I sewed, she napped on the table. When I made coffee, she brushed against my legs. The house had warmth again, not from people, but from life itself. That night, I sat by the window, gazing at the streetlights in the distance. I wrote in my journal, "I once thought losing my child meant losing everything, but sometimes, to find yourself again, you must let certain people go. Because not everyone who shares your blood is truly family. Family is where you can breathe without fear of being a burden." I put down the pen, stroked Luna's fur, and exhaled softly. For the first time in a long while, I was home, truly home in peace, without fear. If you've ever had to choose between love and self-respect, comment, "I choose myself." Half finging stared at Clies and four. So the finging that Auden miscarried. Because like Ella Lenena, sometimes the bravest act isn't holding on, it's letting go for the sake of peace. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay to watch Part 7, The Healing Days, when a mother learns to love herself again. Time passed quietly, like a gentle stream. Since the day Scott and Carly left, I've been living the life I once lost, slow, peaceful, and truly mine. No more hurried footsteps, no more condescending voices, only the scent of morning coffee, the rhythmic hum of my sewing machine, and the soft purr of Luna when she wants to be stroked. At first, the silence felt empty. I used to hear someone opening the fridge, or little Camille giggling in the next room. But soon, I realized silence isn't loneliness. It's the reward for those brave enough to stand after being broken. Every morning, I brew a small cup of coffee, add a bit of cinnamon and brown sugar. I sit by the window, where sunlight streams through white curtains and spills across the wooden table. Luna curls up beside me, her tail wrapped gently around my wrist. No one tells me to tone down the smell. No one warns that this isn't good for the baby. I get to be myself without permission, without fear of judgment. I've started stitching old fabrics again. Not just clothes, but the torn pieces of my own heart. My old Singer hums softly like a lullaby. I sew pillowcases for neighbors, handkerchiefs with the word peace embroidered for friends from church. One day, Mrs. Rodriguez placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Ella Lenena, do you see? Even scraps of fabric can become beautiful again when sewn with love." I smiled. Yes. Just like people, even when torn apart, they can be mended with kindness. She hugged me tightly, and in that moment, I knew I was truly healing. One April morning, while trimming the garden, the mailman stopped at my gate. He handed me an envelope marked, "From Scott Johnson." I stood still for a long moment before opening it. "Mom, today is your birthday. I didn't come because I know you still need time. But I want you to know I'm changing. Carly found a job, I'm working 2 shifts, and we're finishing the payments we owe you. Camille says Grandma whenever she sees your picture in our room. I know you're not ready to see us yet, but I'll wait. I just want you to know I'm proud of you for having the strength to say enough. Because of you, I finally understand what self-respect and true love mean." Inez Sidley would do it. A tear fell onto the envelope, leaving a faint round stain not of sadness, but of pride and forgiveness. I placed the letter on the altar beside Robert's photo and whispered, "Robert, our son has finally grown up." I began doing things I once forgot. Morning walks at the park, yoga classes for seniors, learning Italian recipes on YouTube. I even bought a light blue floral dress, the same color Carly once mocked as too old. I put it on, looked in the mirror, and laughed. So what if I'm old? As long as I feel beautiful. I also started seeing a therapist every week. Dr. Hills, a gentle woman with silver hair, once asked me, "How do you feel now when you think about Carly and Scott?" I smiled. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just grateful. Because without them, I wouldn't have learned how to stand up again." She nodded. "That's the true strength of a mother forgiving without losing herself." I left her office feeling lighter than ever. I realized forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing to stop letting the past control the present. One afternoon, I opened my bedroom window and let the sunlight flood in. The house felt warm as if glowing from within. On the table, the cobalt blue dishes with golden rims still sat there. I had repaired them using kintsugi, filling the cracks with gold. I looked at them and smiled. We've both been broken, and now we're even more beautiful. Luna jumped onto the table, brushing her cheek against my hand. I picked up one of the dishes, tracing the golden seam with my fingers, and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me that wounds don't make me weaker. They make me precious." Sums of Manner. That evening, as the sunset painted the sky in gold, I wrote the final line in my journal. Today, I am no longer the betrayed mother. I am the woman who found her way home in spirit and in life. I closed the book, gazed out at the garden where lavender bloomed and its fragrance danced in the wind. Outside, the wind chimes sang softly. I took a deep breath and felt every part of me smiling. I knew my new life had just begun. If Ella Lenena's story touched you, if it reminded you that you too deserve peace, comment, "I choose peace." Because sometimes the bravest act isn't revenge, it's healing yourself. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay for more family revenge stories coming tomorrow.